Today I'm doing another book recommendation video, and today we're talking about hidden gems, lesser known books, or maybe just books that aren't talked about as much as other books are, but they are still absolutely worth your time. And we're going to start the whole thing off right here with Susie McKee Charnas and the Vampire Tapestry. Now I want to start with this because actually, as a matter of fact, this is a book I'm still currently reading. I'm not even done with it. I have like 50 pages left and it's here. I don't even care. I know more than I need to know to be able to tell you that you need to go out and read this book. This is The Vampire Tapestry. I put this on my TBR for this month because it was a vampire book and I was looking for a scary kind of horror story-esque novel. This isn't that. But that's not a knock against the book. Actually, what this book is probably the most interesting and unique take on a vampire story that I have read in a very long time. Now, The Vampire Tapestry is a book that was actually written as a series of novellas, 5 of them that were then later put together and released as a novel. And the novellas follow the same vampire character. He is a man. He is a college professor. He is Dr. Wayland, and he is a much more down-to-earth, much more grounded, much more scientific-based vampire. He is not the typical Dracula-type figure that you are used to seeing. Then he's not a typical predator of people. He does need to feed on blood, and he does have certain ways of getting blood and feeding on people and getting his supply. But it is a much more practical approach to doing so and much less of a monster of the week style. Then the novellas are shockingly different, and they're all told from a different person's perspective, and they all are engaging with Dr. Wayland in a much different way. And it's just sometimes he is a professor. Sometimes I don't even want to get into all the details of what he is in the different novellas because it feels like spoiler territory, but there are, I will say, shockingly different perspectives on even the same character in the book as you move through the novella, and then the novella itself is a shockingly different take on the vampire story. So much so that I just can't recommend it enough. It is just for the simple fact of getting this different perspective on this specific genre was such a breath of fresh air. I can't recommend it enough. Next up is Chasm City by Alastair Reynolds. And this is a book that takes place within the Revelation Space universe. If you've heard of Alastair Reynolds, you've probably heard of Revelation Space. If you've heard of Alastair Reynolds, you've definitely heard of House of Suns. These are recommended to the nth degree. Chasm City, on the other hand, one I don't hear a whole lot about. Chasm City is a standalone novel within the Revelation Space universe, but it is almost like a detective chase story. Our main character is like a security agent named Tanner. He's chasing a man named Rivich kind of across the solar system to this planet, which is Chasm City, and he also, our main character Tanner, has a virus that causes flashbacks to somebody else's life entirely. It was the founder of his original homeworld. So while we're on this chase through this Chasm City, which, by the way, has been infected by a thing called the melding plague, and it's caused all of the AI kind of building bots and everything mechanical and computer-based to run rampant and run out of control. So the buildings have been built out of control by these automatic builders. Everything inside of people, the mechanical implants, anything computerized, nothing is working properly. So you have this wild, wacky tale of this guy being chased through the city. The city has the melding plague. Our main character is having flashbacks to somebody else's life, and it's just wild. It is such a fun romp through a space opera that you've ever seen. Very quickly, not too far into the book, you're going to realize that not everything seems to be quite adding up. Not everything is quite what it seems, and then you're going to have to start putting all the different pieces, the different mysteries together. It's not rocket science. There's a lot of the connections that I saw coming a mile away. It's not like the most, oh my gosh, at the end of the book when the reveals happen to you. But boy, the process of getting there is just so much fun. I can't help but recommend it. It was an absolute blast. Next up is going to be the Dao De Jing, translation by Ken Liu. Now, I know the Tao Te Ching is a book that I'm assuming most people have heard about. It is an ancient text. It is a book from, 2,500 years ago? Give or take a century. And it's kind of like the Taoist or Taoist teachings and poems and philosophy. And it's really short little piece of work, and it's been floating around for thousands of years. But this is the translation, the new translation by Ken Liu. Now, Ken Liu is an author in his own right of short fiction like The Paper Menagerie, long fiction like his epic fantasy, The Dandelion Dynasty. He is also a very famous translator of other people's work like The Three-Body Problem. Now, everything Ken Liu pretty much touches kind of turns to gold. This guy is amazing. The Tao Te Ching by him is his translation of the Tao Te Ching. So he tried to simplify the language, tried to make it a little bit more understandable, and I think he kept the poetry out of it. I forget exactly what he said in the introduction, how he approached the translation. But what he then does with it is he'll give you a poem or two or three, and then he'll interject. He'll give you a few pages of his thoughts on what it has been translated so far, and his thoughts as to what that could mean, what that should mean, and kind of ways of looking at it, perspectives on it. And he tries to give you insight into what you're reading while informing you on what you're reading, while not really causing any major impression on what you're reading, because he wants you to take from it what you're going to take from it, all while he's contemplating on himself and what he's taking from it. It is fascinating to see the process of him attempting to translate a work while attempting to process that work and to do all of this for you in the same book. Then he intentionally even states that he's trying to slow you down in the process of translating the book for you, because you can burn through this in a couple of hours, and if you do so, you're missing the point of the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is a much more philosophical book. You're supposed to be reading it slower. You're supposed to be focusing and meditating on the different poems and the different entries as you go through it. And by adding these stop breaks, essentially, where he's just going to kind of go off on his own little path and his own little journey in between the chapters, he's intentionally trying to slow you down as you go through the book so you don't burn through the material as quickly as you otherwise could or would or might. Anyway, at the end of the day, it is the Tao Te Ching. It's the same thing as every other person has translated, but done in such a fresh and unique way that I couldn't help but love every second of it. I can't recommend it enough, especially if you're a fan of Ken Liu, where I recommend it just in case you haven't yet heard of it or haven't picked it up. God, it's good. Next up, we're going to do Mockingbird by Walter Tevis. This is another recent read that I have done, and it's just so good. This one is the story of almost like a post-apocalyptic world. It's the end of the world. Humanity's dying out. Everything's kind of going away. Technology's breaking down because it's so old and nobody is left to repair it. Humanity is kind of fed with these pills that make them both apathetic and sterile. So there are no more babies being born and the world's just kind of all withering away. Then we follow a man, a woman, and an android, the most sophisticated android ever made. And the man learns to read, which is illegal in this world, and then he's going to teach the woman how to read, which is also very illegal. And then they're going to go on this journey of kind of enlightenment, while the android's stuck on his own path of being the oldest and almost the most sophisticated and the most wise creature in a world that he kind of really is tired of existing in. And we really just go from there. And once again, I don't want to spoil anything that happens in the book because it's just short, sweet, wonderful, and just such a good story. And it's just so introspective, and it's just so wonderful, the journey that some of these characters go on and what we learn and how we feel about the android, what we learn and how we feel about the man and the woman. Oh my gosh. So good. And it's so fascinating once you look into Walter Tevis, because he's like not a science fiction guy. He has a couple science fiction books, but he also wrote like The Queen's Gambit. He also wrote The Color of Money, which was a book about playing pool that was turned into a movie with Tom Cruise. There's The Hustler. Like, he did so much that has nothing to do with science fiction. And then he'll step outside of the box with something like this, and he'll come up with some of the most touching science fiction that you've read in a minute. And last but not least, we're going to talk about The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell. And this one is just a standalone story that happens to take place in the same world as Cloud Atlas. Now, if you've heard of David Mitchell, you've probably heard of Cloud Atlas. One that is not talked about near as much is The Bone Clocks. And this one is fabulous. It's basically just as good as Cloud Atlas is. It is told in a very similar style. It is a series of stories that kind of follow one after the other from different perspectives, from different POVs. But this one is all about the life of a woman named Holly Sykes. The first and the last stories will have her as our main POV. The rest of the stories all take place from the point of view of a different character. And every one of them has its own feeling, its own vibe. Some are funny, some are not. So, and it starts in 1984, and they jump ahead about 10 to 15 years every single story till it's 2043-ish. And sometimes you're stuck in this main character's whatever event is happening to be taking place in that specific story that you're in. And sometimes it's not even obvious when, where, or how Holly's going to show up, or what she'll even have to do with that person's life or with the story that's being told at that second in time. But the time you are done with all 5 of the stories, or 6, I forget now that I just said that, and you have a full perspective on her life and all of the events that surrounded her life, what she meant to all these other people in their lives, and what all of this has to do with the bigger, grander scope and scale of the story that he's trying to tell. Because David Mitchell's telling stories on a scale that's very large. He's going to zoom into these very small little bubbles and let you live there and get these real small, tight, private stories, but he's using these to tell this much bigger scale of a story that's going to span it's kind of hard to comprehend what he's doing throughout the course of a book. And then when you tie it together with the fact that it takes place in the same universe as something like a Cloud Atlas, it starts to spiral out of control, like just how large of ideas and concepts he's attempting to tackle in these books. And the way that he's doing it is by this really small hyper focus on these really small moments that add up to so much more once you're done. It's so hard to explain. If you haven't read a David Mitchell book, I highly recommend it. Go grab at least this, or at least Cloud Atlas if you're not going to grab this one. Get something, because this man is brilliant. He's very good at what he does. If you're not clicking with it right away, give it some time. Give it at least a few of the short stories before you really condemn it or, whatnot. I don't know. I still say go get it. It's great. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's video. And as always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.